So in this portion, we're going to be interviewing our good friend Mina here. So Mina, can you tell us about your program?
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me. It's my first time in Montreal. Really pumped. If you guys know of any good places and you're from here, please talk to me afterwards. I just want to see the city. He's nodding his head. I appreciate it. So my name is Mina Salib. I am from New York City. I'm the program manager at the Future Labs at NYU. So we are a university incubator that is very unique in the fact that we don't necessarily just take university startups. So we are actually taking startups from really all over the world, incubating, accelerating them. We have about 4 incubators across New York City, focusing on specific technology verticals. And we just started something very interesting called the AI Nexus Lab, which is an artificial intelligence acceleration program. What's interesting about our program, we started out very, industry agnostic, technology agnostic, taking in the best companies in New York City. Some of our graduates are like Clarify, CB Insights, Balance Exchange, companies like that. But we saw, a very interesting thing in the ecosystem where, our New York market was getting very saturated with, really at this point probably 100 incubators across New York City, a bunch of accelerators, and we needed to figure out a way to differentiate ourselves. So as opposed to focusing on industries, which many accelerators do, we decided to go all in on different technologies. So we're launching this artificial intelligence. We launched an artificial intelligence acceleration program, and now we're working on something for blockchain and AR/VR. So that's a little bit about a program.
So how many total companies are in the portfolio?
Yeah, so we launched back in 2009 in partnership with the city of New York. So they put up some funding with NYU. Since 2009, we've incubated successfully about 70 companies with a portfolio that's valued at over $1 billion. About 70 companies currently in our space. We have, across the 4 incubators, we have about 45 to 50 companies. And about, I would say 30% of those are artificial intelligence companies.
And then do you have any particular case studies or examples of success where it was a really amazing company for you guys?
Yeah, well, I guess one of our more interesting companies, possibly one of the best days that I've ever had at the Future Labs, was when one of our graduate companies, Geometric Intelligence, got acquired by Uber to now launch Uber AI. So they were a very interesting company in the fact that they're a horizontal AI company where they just gathered a bunch of the best AI minds really across the world, with PhDs from Stanford and NYU and masters from really all over the place that focus specifically on machine learning. They gathered them all in one company, and it became kind of like a research AI company, and Uber acquired them to build out their entire AI team at Uber AI. To go ahead and compete with like the Amazons and Googles of the world, and obviously help out with the autonomous vehicle movement that they're obviously going towards. So that was one of our best days, and that was the same day that we launched the AI Nexus Lab. So we're like, this is the best news ever. I actually went out. My director took me out for a beer that day because we felt good about ourselves.
So obviously this panel is around triggering change, and you guys have been around since 2009, so you guys have been around since the start of these programs. Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about how you guys have pivoted or changed, or what kind of implementation changes have you guys made in the program?
Yeah, so kind of like what I touched on, we were very industry agnostic, taking in the best companies, really, no matter what their technology looked like and no matter what industry they were in, but really focusing and differentiating ourselves based on what we had available because of our connection to NYU. So the fact that we had AI researchers and machine learning experts on staff at NYU, professors, and the fact that we had access to talent from students and able to help benefit our companies, we really went all in and tried to figure out how we were different from like the Techstars and the Wicoms and the 500s and different accelerators like that. And that really helped us create a differentiating factor for our program, as opposed to, you know, saying, all right, we're gonna go all in on this industry. That wasn't necessarily our strength, right? We didn't have a lot of, you know, fashion experts or, you know, fintech experts, but we had a lot of technology experts. So, you know, focusing on really our differentiating factor as opposed to kind of what everybody else was doing was really important for us. So, yeah, I would, yeah.
So we were talking a bit back in the green room about this new AI program you guys are launching, and one of the things we were talking about is just there's so many people working in that space right now, and how to differentiate what's real between, you know, what's a scam.
Yeah.
I think we get a lot of scam applications for artificial intelligence and machine learning. So how have you guys done due diligence on these different hyped up industries? Yeah,
so I guess you guys know JF is going to come out on stage. So I'm going to I'll save some stuff for him, and he's pretty real. So we'll save that stuff, a lot of that stuff for him. But for us, we decided to use the companies that we were able to incubate. So the Geometric Intelligence, the Clarifies, and you know, the Veteries, and all these people that we had successfully incubated as a way for those founders to actually vet the founders we were trying to accept, right? So when we would get an application, instead of being like, oh, this sounds really cool, we would just talk to a machine learning expert and be like, is this tech real? Are they doing something real? You know, like, what the hell's going on here? And they would, you know, get behind the hood and figure out, is this real, is it not real? Whether, you know, where are they training their data, right? So different ways that you can find out if an AI company is real, right? Where is the data coming from? How are they training their data? Is it, you know, are they using a training module? Are they using a training data set? Or are they, you know, training their data through, you know, a proprietary way, right? Where they found a need in the market, like Clarify, right? They were able to help people tag their photos, right? And help to increase and grow their own data set, right? In a very natural, organic way, as opposed to using training data. Are they using simply, how much computing power do they need to run their algorithms, right? AI needs a lot of compute power, and they need a lot of storage. So if they're not using a lot of storage, they're probably not doing a lot of in-house real AI, real machine learning. So different things like that were really helpful to us to really, you know, help us know that we're not taking in some BS company. Yeah.
Since you had mentioned that you're not just focused on, you know, NYU students, you guys really take companies from anywhere. How do you source that deal flow?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So depending on which vertical we're looking at. So if it's AI, we're going to, you know, the researchers and you know, the faculty in NYU, in Stanford, in Cornell, to be like, hey, we have this accelerator program. Who are your most talented students, right? Are they building companies? Can you, you know, refer us? Here's our program. Here's our link. Have them sign up, right? And obviously just the community, right? Like, I run something called Flash Pitch, which is a monthly pitch competition in New York City, which definitely helps us source a lot. So we get, you know, 30 applications a month for companies in New York City to pitch at this competition, and then we'll be able to use that as another sourcing mechanism. So creating your own ways of sourcing as opposed to relying on others to be referrals is super important. And obviously, just industry experts. Like, if there's a successful founder, they probably know other successful founders that are maybe starting companies again, or people in their network. So that's kind of how we source. Yeah.
So I'm seeing we have about 5 seconds left,
yeah.
Before we're going to bring Chris out here. So
I've been skydiving. My favorite color is blue. I've been in the pyramid. I'm Egyptian. All right, that's it.
Awesome.
Hey, guys.
Cool. So with that, I'm going to bring out Chris, and he'll tell you a bit more about himself.
All right.
Thanks. Okay. Chris, it doesn't matter. You know who we are. Hey, Chris.
How's it going?
What's up, man? So this is Chris, guys. Chris is awesome. We've chatted a lot. Chris, you want to tell the people about yourself?
Sure. I'm the artist formerly known as program manager of AlphaLab Gear. I ran the Alpha Gear program for about 3 years. 6 months ago, I jumped ship to join one of our top portfolio companies, Interface Materials. So I'm running ops for them now. It's an advanced materials company. We improve the efficiency of industrial cooling systems. But yeah, like I said, prior to that, I ran the Alpha Gear Accelerator for 3 years. We're a hardware accelerator. By hardware, we mean physical products. So that could be Internet of Things, robotics, medical devices, anything that has a physical product. And Alpha Gear's MO is really taking early stage companies sort of at that prototype phase and helping them figure out that product market fit and really scale up their manufacturing.
Awesome. And you've been on the founder side, you've been a PM, and you've been a marketer and a writer, and you've done a lot. Why hardware? Like what gets you excited about hardware? I know Alpha Gear focuses a lot on hardware. What gets you excited about hardware?
I think one of the main things is right around that sort of 2010, 2011 timeframe. There are a lot of changes that started happening, really from the from the cell phone market, right? Sensors just started diving in cost. There's a lot of what used to be really expensive hardware was now a commodity. That made it a lot cheaper to sort of hack together some prototypes. Also, places like maker spaces opening up, where before you might have had it's $2 or $3 million worth of equipment that you can sort of get access to for $100 a month. You can have a laser printer or 3D printer, laser cutter, CNC machine. Makes it really easy to sort of get a basically Frankenstein prototype off the ground, and then the crowdfunding platforms coming available and saying, hey, is there actually a market for this? Sort of all started swelling this quote unquote hardware revolution. And so, but the difference is you have a lot more challenges with hardware. There's a lot of benefits, right? You have IP that's actually enforceable. Companies looking at new technology will often just acquire a company rather than trying to build it themselves. But there's a lot of opportunities that sort of were coming up, and so Alpha Lab is we have a software accelerator that's been around. It was like 5th or 6th accelerator in the country. It's been around since 2008. And so we started getting all these hardware companies applying to the software accelerator and say, okay, functionally, like these companies run a little bit different, and this might not fit exactly into our model. So that's why we created Alpha Gear.
Awesome. And for anybody in the audience that's accepting hardware company, what's the #1 thing a hardware company really needs to be successful? Like, do they need customers? Do they need pilots? Do they need help with the hardware? What is that?
Yeah, so it's been interesting because when we started in 2013, there were probably 4 accelerators around the world that focused specifically on physical products, and most accelerators wouldn't touch hardware. They say hardware is hard, it's too expensive, too much manufacturing risk, takes too long, we're not looking at it. And so for us, but now with sort of the rise of IoT and AR and VR, a lot of accelerators are trying to sort of shoehorn hardware companies into their accelerators, and it might not be the best fit. I think there's sort of two stages of hardware company, right? That's sort of where they need help in acceleration. A is sort of that initial product market fit, where they've hacked something together, they have some initial customers, whether it's B2B or B2C. Maybe they have one big customer that's looking into it, or they got a lot of people signed up saying, hey, I really want this. And that's sort of a time where they can use some funding to get units out in the hundreds of units or thousands of unit range, sort of prove that market traction. And then there's also, okay, now I have to make like 100,000 of these, and I really have to scale up manufacturing. Do I do it in the US? Do I do it overseas? Or Canada? Do I do it overseas? Like, how do I scale up? Right. And so I think it's important when you're looking at hardware companies for your accelerator, if you think about taking them, what is their business model? What are their costs going to be? How are they going to deal with manufacturing? Is it just an IoT company that's basically selling data and they have off-the-shelf commodity sensors, or are they really building something proprietary that's going to take a lot of capital? And do you have the funding or the funding partners to help with that?
Yeah, and I guess a lot of these accelerators, we're all really trying to get our companies to the next stage. We're trying to get them funded. What are VCs looking for, and how? Because to convince a VC, like this is scalable, this is legit. Like, yeah. How do you do that? Where do hardware companies? I know, obviously based on the company, but where do they need to be at a seed stage? Do they need pilots? Do they need customers? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. So it's funny because when we started Alpha Lab Gear, we brought in one of the investors that was invested in one of the VCs that invested in a lot of our software companies, and he said, listen, hardware is hard, we don't invest in it, like, good luck. And then 18 months later, he turned around and led a $4 million round in one of our companies. And so there's like a little bit of a disconnect, right? Yeah. And I think it really comes down to what you said, it's the scalability, right? Like, at the end of the day, like, you have to make sure that VCs are going to be able to hit the returns and the time frame that they're looking for. If you're looking, for a VC that's like, yeah, I gotta flip this in 5 or 10 years, and it's got to hit this, whatever it is, triple, double, time frame. Is that feasible with a hardware company? It might be with some of the IoT stuff. It might not with some of the robotics. Right.
Do you think it's the best time to start a hardware company for a founder?
I mean, it's the best time that's ever existed. I think that the amount of, resources out there to, open source hardware, Arduinos, all the the community is really growing. And, whereas in the beginning, at Alpha Lab Gear, we have some really, really great mentors, because we had all of these people, in robotics and other hardware companies that sort of slogged through back when it was really hard. And when they found out that we were starting a hardware accelerator, they jumped at the chance to help our hardware companies. And usually that's a really bad sign. Usually you don't want those type of mentors in your accelerator at all, right? You want to hunt down and recruit like the top people that are maybe only going to give, 15, 30 minutes a month because they're out, being amazing. But it's been really nice, because there's a very, hardware is still a niche, right? It's a hardware revolution, but it's a tight-knit community, and people really try to help each other.
Yeah, I know we talked about this. Not every mentor is a great mentor. Yeah. Right? They could actually waste our time. How's your job evolved, right? Like, I know now you're at the startup, right? You went to the portfolio company, but how has, Alpha Gear evolved from the beginning to now, and, how are they helping startups better?
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we learned is sort of what I just talked about, right? There's two main inflection points of helping a hardware company succeed. That initial point where they're sort of doing that product market fit, and then the scaling. And that comes from lots of years of experience. And we used to have an 8-month program. It was the longest program, that I know of anywhere. And it's because it takes a little, while longer to get through sort of that scale up. And now, as of a month ago, Alpha Lab Gear has split into 2 different programs. There's sort of initial, 20-week, 22-week, something like that, program that's focused on that, really like, okay, you've got a prototype, let's find the market fit, let's move from there. And they also have just a straight manufacturing program where it's like, hey, we're going to help you, this is going to be quick and dirty, 3 months, help you get off the ground. And I think that was definitely a lesson learned from us, because it's hard, we're a industry agnostic accelerator. We take stuff from all over the place. And so, there are some companies that came in and had like a working prototype, some initial traction. There are some companies coming in with 20K MRR. And trying to build a program for that, can be tough. So I think really splitting that out was the big thing that we learned.
And so now that you're a founder of a company, what do you wish a program had? Now I know it's probably maybe a hard question, but like, what do you need? Like, what would make your life easier?
I think going back to the talk earlier, when they had the stat about like 42% of companies were dissatisfied with the mentorship. I think that's really true, because a lot of times, in maybe a 12-week accelerator program, you can say, okay, yeah, you're generally all B2B SaaS or B2C SaaS, and these are the things you're going to need to go to start your company off the ground. That changes really quickly for hardware, right? And you need people with deep industry expertise. And so trying to find all those people is really tough. And I think we've done a pretty good job of it at Gear. But really, we were able to help. So when I was PM, Noah is our CEO, like when he was starting, like we got him right up to the point where like now we're working on industrial cooling systems, and like, all right, that's all right. We don't know anybody in industrial cooling systems. And trying to find like that next step in mentorship and pulling them into the network is a really, really big value add to companies. Funding's great, owning the network's great, but really having those connections that can help guide a company and make those customer connections are incredibly valuable.
Awesome. What's your favorite color?
Aquamarine?
I love that.
Yeah, I don't know.
Me too. Not really. But, well, thank you, man.
Yeah,
pleasure.
Thank you so much.
All right, JF.
All right, next up we have JF. Sorry we don't have any walk-up music for you this time.
Hey, hi everyone. Hi.
All right. Well, first off, JF, merci beaucoup pour parler avec nous aujourd'hui.
Ça me fait plaisir.
That's all I got.
Pretty good.
You're a pretty big deal in Montreal and in the startup scene in general. But for those of us who don't know you in the audience, can you give a quick background on yourself and Element AI? You guys just raised $100 million Series A, and some of that is going into funding AI startups. Are you a startup? Are you an accelerator? What is Element AI?
Yeah, so I'm a 15-year entrepreneur. Since 2001, I've been building business that use what now is under the big umbrella of artificial intelligence. And then this is my third company. And Element AI, we're focusing at helping large organizations transition towards utilizing artificial intelligence at the core of their operation. We don't do AI as a feature type projects. And in delivering service to them and solution, we're building a platform. We're doing a lot of fundamental research. We're providing them access to the technology through some product we do. And we've also put together an interesting concept, which we call a business network, which is halfway incubator, a studio, an accelerator, and we also invest sometimes in these projects. So I guess that's what we're
checking all of the boxes.
So, I can continue on this a little bit. It's really the result of a process of us engaging for quite a bit of time with startups. For some of you who don't know, one of the groups that are part of the co-founders of Element AI is the Canadian VC, Real Ventures. I have a long experience of investing in seed, and now they're doing also Series A companies. They invested in my second company. I was their first investment of their second fund and their first large exit in 2012. And we'd always kept a relationship. And as I, got my last vesting, I was looking for the next project, and they welcomed me as an entrepreneur in residence. And this is really where we started to iterate together. And as I was mentoring some startups and engaging with them, I've been a mentor at Founder Fuel for quite a while, we realized that the contribution from typical accelerators or other incubator was not enough to help startup.
In terms of just money, or?
It's that the barrier to entry, and now I can put word on it, but I couldn't at the time. We just knew that it was not enough, like that it was too short, money was not enough, and every time it was kind of specific, and it was kind of an experiment, what you needed to do. Startups need to really figure out, what is the correct data you need to feed, what is the correct artificial intelligence architecture. You need to reach a certain critical mass of data for it to work. And this is not something you can just pinpoint and say, hey, the last 3 investments we've done, it took 3 months, 10 customers, and 1 petabyte of information, and here you go, it's going to work out. Yeah. So that's not the concept. So this was kind of the early motivation to try to build something where we could help companies succeed and skew the odds of them getting to the point where AI works.
Nice. So yeah, I don't think there's any doubt here that AI and deep learning have already revolutionized the way a lot of businesses are operating, or are going to continue to do so. For those MDs and PMs in the audience who are looking at this early stage AI company that might be applying, how they might not have much traction. It's hard to see if there's that much there. How can they tell if a company has promise or whether they're just full of it?
It's not necessarily obvious. I think one of the things is to assess the level of maturity in their understanding of the key role that data governance will have in their success in the future. It's not just about the fact that you need some data. It's not the fact that they found the one attribute that enables them to do better than what's out there. That's not enough. the good entrepreneurs are going to succeed over time and will really exploit all the potential of that technology are people that have a very good grasp of how do you go after figuring out what is the next piece of data that will be useful and why and how am I going to go after it, and are capable of building like these small ROI or business case and can design very effectively experiment to go and try these things out and then grow their service, grow their system, and provide more and more and more. And this is very different than the playbook we used to have when we were looking mostly at mobile driven applications or SaaS application. And one of the proof points that I got here, and they're accumulating now, is, well, first, with Real Ventures, we've built a thesis so that their new fund is exclusively on AI, because your thesis needs to be different as an investor. The second one is, well, Microsoft in December, and we were their first investment, but we've collaborated with them, build an entire fund around artificial intelligence. Yesterday, Google announced their new fund, Gradient, dedicated to artificial intelligence. They're not just doing that because there's a hype. They would have just poured more money at Google Ventures. No, they're building a separate team and providing more assets and trying to be more useful, because what these companies need is totally different.
Yeah. So speaking of large corporations, when I was running the Hardware Cup in Boston, Melissa Withers of Beta Spring had this great quote where she described working with corporations, as a bear hug, where it's really comforting at first until you realize that you're getting your ribs cracked. So how do you partner with these larger corporations, and how do you teach them how to work with startups? How do you teach startups to work with larger corporations?
You're touching one of the fundamental reason why we've decided to build Element the way it is built. And we're really an organization that built a bridge between the two for that exact reason. I've never put it that way.
That's not on the pitch deck?
I might steal it. So just I'll give you credit.
Yeah, it's all Melissa Withers.
Really well said. No, seriously, you need a critical mass. You engage with a large corp. You need to navigate the politics. You need to be able to deal with all the the processes that are there. It takes time. The reason why there's such a big opportunity when it gets to large organization and why I go through the pain of engaging with them is that for now, they're one of the rare groups, outside of the consumer stuff where data is all available on the web or where you can quickly, acquire data sets that are public or private that you can buy. They're one of the rare groups that have enough data for sophisticated techniques in AI to work. So it's huge opportunity because you can do stuff that nobody else does. If you can convince them to get their act together, clean their data, do the big project, and do that. And for a startup, it's hard to support it. And this is where we act like a specialized integrator for the business network startup that we have, and then help them go through that noise, prep the opportunity, and then give them access to these data sets and these nice processes that these companies are looking to automate using AI.
Nice. Well, yeah, I guess to wrap up here, I know you've been doing Element about a year now? How long has it been?
Publicly, it's been 9 months.
9 months, okay.
We've been working at it for 2 years.
Okay, so thinking back to 2 years ago, starting at square one, is there anything that you know now that would change the way that you're running your operation?
I'm changing my operations every day. So as I'm learning stuff, we keep iterating.
What are like the top 2 or 3, if we can narrow it down that far?
We've been evolving the model quite a bit. We've started from with intention of doing actually an accelerator. That was our #1 idea at the beginning. We called it AI Studio. We registered studio.ai, and that was kind of the start. And as we've iterated and engaged with startups and talked with large corp, we realized, well, we need to provide a little bit more here. And then we need to, science is going really fast, so we need to help them be better at transferring the science that is coming out into their product. Well, but they don't have the skills to do that. They can't attract more than 2 good scientists, and then they can't afford them because they don't have shares to throw at them anymore. So we should have a critical mass of researchers, and we've been iterating on this, to end up, taking more and more room, but still, like, the concept is in place, and what we're providing to these companies, I think, is still quite exciting. And they don't need to buy everything; they can just partner with us, or let us invest and do a bit more if they feel like it, if they think it's useful. So, I mean, I would have started where I'm right now, but no, it's been a very iterative story, a very iterative journey.
Awesome. Well, I think we're at time, and I just want to say thanks so much.
Thank you. Welcome back, Danielle.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back. I missed you guys. Right.
So my turn.
Yes, now I get to be on the spot.
So from my perspective, and I'm jumping right into the topic, I think that what you guys do is quite interesting from a thesis perspective, as a lot of accelerators tends to be backed by different stakeholders. The fact that it's a corporate accelerator, I think, makes your project quite interesting. I don't know if you could maybe talk a little bit about the format, but more importantly, what's your thesis when you guys have been thinking about doing this?
Yeah, absolutely. I know there was some talk of corporate programs earlier and how to work with corporates, and I have a bit of background prior to, so I'm at Jaguar Land Rover. So we have an automotive-focused incubator in Portland, Oregon. We invest in 12 companies a year, bring them up. It's a 6-month program. I'm happy to get into logistics, but but in general, prior to that, I came from Techstars, working in corporate programs as well. And what you'll notice is that a lot of enterprise companies will start typically with a powered by program or a corporate program that or become a sponsor in 500. Those are great turnkey, awesome solutions to get you in the door and understanding how to work with entrepreneurs. It's great to expose your C-suite to the environment, to the atmosphere. In the long term, for us, it was a better fit to bring that in-house. So we're actually employees of JLR. So there's both pros and cons to that. But most like most strategic investors, we do look at ROI. We are interested in return on investment, although for us, my primary measuring factor, my number one KPI is, did I get it in a car? We have that hands down. I go to my board, I go to my executive team, and they say, how many things did you get in a car this year? So that will always be our number one primary factor. We do have a multimodal approach because whereas everything we look at has some sort of integration technically into the car, we do have another team in the UK called In Motion Ventures, and maybe you guys have heard of them. We actually did a big round in Lyft recently. But they're more focused on mobility as a service, so ride sharing and carpooling, lots of other amazing products there. So while there is overlap, we're the nerdy engineers who are kind of heads down, seeing how we can actually put it into the car.
What triggered the need to be more involved? Because we see a lot of corporate funds, but when it gets to accelerator, they're less common. And you've been running this for a while. And you're 8 cohort in, right? Yeah, so we're selecting our 8th cohort right now. We've been around for about a year and a half, so not as that long, but yeah. So for us, automotive is hard. The number one thing we find with entrepreneurs is they don't know how to work with OEMs. They don't know how to, but I think it's on both sides, really, because everybody's still trying to figure out this. The landscape is changing dramatically. How can we work with startups? How can we work together? Which is why they pulled me in. I have no background in automotive at all. So, but luckily I'm surrounded by a ton of experts. I have 42,000 engineers to pull from at any given time. I can call them up and help them do due diligence, things like that. So you're pulling your own resources into the program. Yeah. How long is the program? So the program is 6 months. Our number one output is a proof of concept during that time. Depending on the complexity of the technology, that could take
2 weeks. If it's something on the app level, if it's hardware, it could take the full 6 months. And we've done everything from drone technology, voice platforms, inaudible sound, data transfer, so tons of different types of technologies. And so during that time, we actually give them engineering staff. So we have an engineering facility in Portland where approximately 2 engineers will sit and work with them on their products. And then hopefully at the end of it, they can sell it to us. If they don't sell it to us, they can go to any other OEM and sell it to them as well. We're not exclusive by any means. So that's kind of the one thing, is we're there to help guide them and help them create a product for automotive, because the production life cycle is so long. It is going to take a very long time to get there. So we're there to help them find that path to production, get them introduced to the industry, understand the players, and whether they work directly with us or through one of our tier ones. At the end of the program, the goal is now you have something you can sell, and hopefully we'll buy it.
Got it. Do you have one example maybe of a company that you've seen like really leveraging the different things that you guys can do really well, and then flow through the program, understanding that every company have different...
They're all special snowflakes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Maybe one that you feel that really highlight well the kind of interaction you guys can put together.
Sure. So initially when we started the program, we were working with very, very early stage companies, concept level in some cases. That was a bit tricky for us because there were so many different pivots, and because we're technology and engineering focused, it's hard to build if you don't know what you're going to build. So, we can do paper prototypes all day, but at the end of the day, we want to get something in a car. So we started working with larger companies. Where we found actually our sweet spot to be is companies that are established in other industries that have technologies that could apply to automotive. So I'll use the example of Listener, so LISNR. They are high frequency audio over inaudible sound, so data transfer. With this, we can think of 20 plus use cases within the car. So whether that's identifying passengers in a seat or instantly connecting to the head unit, there's just so many different possibilities for us to explore. They've come in, they're pretty well established. They've already raised a Series B. I think they're on to a Series C right now. They have partnerships with very large fintech companies. I'm not sure which ones I can mention, but I think Jay-Z was their first investor. So really well established. But they came in, and so from day one, in the first 2 days, we had a prototype of a mobile connection to the car, because one of the biggest problems is that pairing to that Bluetooth pairing thing. You spend most of your time just pairing your phone over and over. So for us, it's instantaneous. It was a really awesome experience. So they're only 3 months in the program, and I think we're working on 5 different use cases at the moment. And so we're excited. Like, how can we use this in more ways? How can we show this to our internal stakeholders in the UK? But we're all very excited about it. So that's just kind of one example of a technology that's doing really well somewhere else that we've been able to say, okay, how can we use this in automotive? How can we make our customer experience better?
And what's the interaction between what you do there and probably your internal R&D labs? How involved are they in how what company you pick? Are you going after some company to try to convince them to join your program? What's the difference, the nuances maybe compared to a more traditional accelerator program? Yeah,
sure. So our stakeholders are definitely in the UK. So we have a senior sign-off approval on every company that comes in. So what we do is we actually create a project for them right when we're like, here's the problem set. So with Listener, it was kind of, how do we identify where passengers sit within a car? It's a very interesting problem set to have. There's a million different ways to do it. Listener is just one example of a technology that we could utilize doing that. So with that, we had stakeholders in the UK giving us projects, and then we would work on those projects while they're in the program. During that, we have weekly calls with them. They'll fly out often and get demos of the technology. We're hoping to get some more stuff going on the ground there, but they are very involved in it as far as selection and stuff. Sometimes we have actually referrals from our research team, because we do have a proper research team So sometimes they'll work with a company there, and they'll say, hey, this is a really cool company. We should continue working with them. Can you guys create this proof of concept with them? So that's really what we work on.
So mainly roadmap acceleration and probably discovery to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Things that you guys wouldn't try, but you'd be willing to spend some time through that program.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.